But
do you speak Hebrew, by the way?
Only in an etymological sense. Like, for example, the name David, that can't be because there's not really a V. See,
doesn't Hebrew mean set apart? Like, it's the set apart, like...
Eber is actually, the Hebrew is what we call the language, and it comes from a man named Eber. Now, Eber was one of the forebears of Abraham, and Abraham is referred to as Abraham the Hebrew, okay, because he's a descendant of Eber. Now, Eber in Hebrew literally means over, like in the Germanic, Ober. It's O-B-E-R in the German, but in the Hebrew it's Eber, and it means to pass over. If anybody wants to look that up, just look up Eber and then go to a dictionary in a concordance, and you'll see that it actually means over. See, so I do speak Hebrew in an etymological sense. I know many words, but I know what they mean, and I know how they're spelled. But if I'm going to have a conversation with somebody from Israel today, they're going to be so bound up with all the V's and Ashkenazic traits that I'm going to get lost quick because I'm not even thinking about those things. These are all modern transitions that have happened over just the last several centuries, But the ancient Hebrew, the Sephardic and more ancient Hebrew, doesn't have things like V's in it, the labial upper teeth and lower lip thing, like we have the letter V.
Also, I had a question in the book. You were giving an example about how the people in ancient Israel never dressed in black or red or had robes on, the spiritual leaders, that they wore only white linen.
That's right. The sun worship, the priests that worked in the pagan temples were constantly fondling ashes because the fire was an emblem of the sun deity. And, of course, that's seen in the Olympic torch when they light the altar of Zeus and the big vat that they have at the game there, and the flying around with the torch, and the sacred fires of the temple were ever burning, and they would usually use a lens to capture the heat of the sun to initiate the bonfires in order to pass those bonfires over to the fireplaces of the homes. And so the presence of the deity was emblematic in the fire itself. And that wasn't the purpose of the fire on the menorah whatsoever, in the Hebrew temple, in Yahuwah's temple. But, when we're talking about the garments that they used, they would wear black because they had a lot of soot and ashes that they were working with, so their garments would naturally be dark-colored, and they were called komar, the priests themselves, which means dark-robed ones. And the komar would immolate dead bodies and sacrifice bodies, and, of course, they would also burn the dead. And, of course, when people came to a funeral in a pagan way, they would burn the body, and the people would come and imitating the priests, they would wear dark colors or black.
So that's where that came from.
That's where that came from, yeah. And when Israel, or when the children of Israel would bury a body, they would wrap the body. They wouldn't burn it, and then they would put it into a bone box, and they would wait for the flesh to dissolve, and then they would gather the bones together. That's why how they did it when they took Joseph's body out of Egypt. When the children of Israel finally got out of bondage, they gathered up Joseph's bones, and they took them with him to be buried in the land of Israel, because they didn't want to be buried in Mitzrayim, or Egypt. But the priests, the Kohen, the Levitical priests, the descendants of Lewi, which was true of Moshe and Aharon. They weren't Jewish people. They were not of that tribe, see. They were Levitical priests. They were told to wear linen garments, white linen, and the color was there. And then, of course, there was some white and blue involved, and because they would have to wear tzitzit. The blue was a symbol of the heavens, I guess, because the sky is blue. It hasn't changed colors, apparently, in thousands of years. And the oxygen in the air causes that scattering to give you that blue color. But the idea of that sapphire blue was brought over into the command in Deuteronomy 22, and I think it's Leviticus 15, where we're told to make tassels to wear on our garments, to put on these tassels in order to remind us with a blue thread of the Torah and to obey the Torah always. And of course that blue thread is a reminder of heaven, and that's why the Torah is ever with us, because the blue sky's there, the blue on the tzitzit, that's what that's called. The tassel is called a tzitzit.
And what about Elohim? Let us leave the last however many minutes we have of this broadcast for you to explain Elohim.
Well, Elohim is a pronoun, okay? It means mighty one, and it can also, some people have said it means mighty one of oaths, and it's referring to the oaths as well as the one that is mighty. El Shaddai is an example that I could use. Shaddai means almighty, and El means mighty one, so it kind of means mighty one, almighty. And it's interesting that while we're on that topic, Elohim is in a short form. Eloah is another one. Not Aloha, but Eloah. And Eloi, like when he was quoting Psalm 22, I believe it was, he was saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, and he was essentially quoting the first verse of that psalm. So we've got the Elohim, Eloi, and Eloah, meaning essentially the same thing. But in Revelation chapter 1, Yahusha himself says, I am El Shaddai. If, you look at it, and he says something else very interesting. He says, I am the Aleph and the Tau, which is in the Greek Alpha and Omega. So he's referring to himself as those markers that he placed in the Scriptures, which no one seems to know about, or hardly anyone. There's markers that are put near the name or when he's making a covenant. The two letters Aleph, Tau, the first letter and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, are like markers that are put in certain places in the Hebrew text that the rabbis don't seem to know what they mean. And so they don't translate them. They just leave them there with dots. They just say, we don't know what it is. But Yahusha explained it when he said, I am the Aleph and the Tau. He was in Revelation chapter 1. He was referring to himself as being the one that was El Shaddai. I am the one who was speaking in those texts. That's the thing that makes the Trinitarians really boil, because they can't believe that he could possibly be the same being, and yet he is. See, when Yahuwah says, I am Yahuwah, and there is no one besides me, in the 43rd chapter of Yeshayahu or Isaiah, and there's no one, there's no mighty one, no Elohim after me, he's saying, and he also says there is no Savior except me. Yahuwah is the Savior. So that would mean that the titles that we have, many people say there's many names that Yahuwah has. That's not true. Yahuwah has one name, and he has all these other roles that he plays. Like he's in a role of Savior. Yahuwah, some people say Yahuwah Shua or Yahshua, but his name Yahusha literally means Yah is our salvation, or Yah is our deliverer. Well, Yahuwah Rapha means Yahuwah is our healer. And then there's other things, Yahuwah Yireh, and many other what they call names, but they're not really names. They're actually his functions.
Where did Jehovah Jireh or Jehovah Jireh come from?
It means it's really Yahuwah Yireh.
Okay.
It's not a J in either word, but Jehovah Jireh is an attempt to say Yahuwah Yireh. Okay. It means Yahuwah provides. And that's what he does when he calls